But if you know, I was just talking to a CEO of a big company and asking him, as I always do, talking to people, you know, what do you think about the economy? And he said, the economy's strong. Customers are buying, businesses are strong, people are adding jobs. He said, we're trying to talk ourselves into a recession. And I agree with that. You know, I think fundamentally the economy is strong, but if you go to the grocery store every day, getting ready for that summer picnic and prices are high, people feel frustrated, and, you know, we get that.
I want to talk about a couple things that the administration hasn't done yet that have been thought of as pretty good short-term solutions. I was talking with Stephanie Murphy, a Democratic congresswoman from Florida, and she pointed out three things, and I've heard this from others. Getting rid of many of these Trump tariffs, in boosting legal immigration, and implementing an all-of-the-above energy policy. I'm going to take the first two. You would like to see some of these Trump tariffs gotten rid of on household items. You're not the only one in the administration. Why hasn't it happened yet?
The president is in the process of making that decision. I want to say a couple things about this. We should be clear about what lifting tariffs would and wouldn't do, right? Like, lifting tariffs isn't going to bring down top-line inflation in a very significant way. What it will do potentially is help consumers on certain, as you say, household goods. And so for that reason, given where inflation is, I think it could make sense to do it. But, you know, the president is being thoughtful about this. Unlike President Trump, those tariffs that he imposed made no sense. And so we are briefing him, and I expect to make a decision shortly. And if he decides to lift certain tariffs, it will be because he knows he has to think about doing everything he possibly can to provide any relief to consumers. But he's going to do it in a thoughtful way that is strategic, and also most important to him and to all of us is without hurting American workers. And that's what we're trying to get done here. With respect to immigration, you know, that's an issue for Congress to take up, and I think that, you know, it's a discussion that we should have. Everybody knows, ask any economist.
Isn't it the single biggest driver, actually,
economic growth
right now, with our supply chain problems, with the labor pressure, with all of this, that in many ways, this inflationary pressure, in some ways, is this labor shortage on the lower end of the scale, right?
In a lot of ways, absolutely. Not in some ways. It's a huge driver, and so increasing the labor supply would certainly help. The other thing we need to do, though, is get women back into the workforce. You talk about single biggest issues.
Yeah.
Look at workforce participation of women without a college degree. We have to be there for those women to get child care, to, you know, reproductive health is on everybody's mind. That's going to hurt the economy. You know, child care, health care, skills, train these women so that they're able to get jobs that are available today and be productive members of the workforce. If you're serious about the labor shortage, lean in to making sure women can fully participate.
On the issue of energy prices, the president proposed a gas tax holiday. There's been crickets in Congress. What other ideas do you have to lower the price of gas?
So that is one, and hopefully Congress takes action. The other thing the president's working on is just increasing supply. You know, fundamentally, this inflation we're experiencing, whether it's gas or goods, is being driven by a lack of supply. Now, there's some good news, right? You saw wholesale gas prices drop significantly recently. I think that's due to the increased supply, and now we have to make sure consumers feel that at the pump. But the president is pushing producers domestically and globally to increase supply so that consumers start to feel it at the pump.
You brought up abortion rights, and it's interesting, whether it's inflation, whether it's abortion rights, whether it's yet another gun massacre in Illinois. There's a growing group of Democrats that are frustrated, believe that the president isn't showing enough energy, isn't showing enough fight on any of these issues. Is any of this criticism, in your view, justified?
No. Look, it's not about who's the best performer. This isn't about, you know, performative. This is about who's going to go to work every day and get the job done and deliver for women. I have to say, on a personal level, I first fell in love with Senator Biden way back when he was fighting for the Violence Against Women Act. I was an intern at the Department of Justice. This is a guy who has devoted decades to working to help women, to provide women rights, and he's fighting every day now. He just signed the executive order to preserve women's health care and reproductive rights.
Does that executive order, what does that order do?
Reproductive
Does
rights.
that executive order, what does that order do other than tell everybody to follow the law? I mean, I don't, it looks like it's a glorified press release.
Well, you know, you put your finger on an issue. A lot of the things that are coming the president's way, he doesn't have a silver bullet to solve. I mean, these issues have to be solved by Congress, or in this case, the Supreme Court and Congress. So he's doing what a good executive does, which is go to his team and say, give me every option, that every tool in my toolbox. And that's what this executive order does. He's pushing the limits of his authority to stand up for women who've had a right taken away. And that's what I know people are frustrated, you know, that folks are cranky with a lot of good reason, but we have to focus on who's going to work every day and solving these problems, not who uses the most fiery language. It's who's going to stick up for women and deliver for them, whether it's health care, reproductive rights, or jobs, or training, or child care, and that's President Biden.
Secretary Gina Raimondo, Commerce Secretary, and as I said, the former governor of Rhode Island. Appreciate you coming on, sharing your perspective with us.
Thanks, Chuck.
You got it. From one party's leadership challenge to another, the Republican Party is also facing one. Former President Trump still wields huge influence on Republicans in Congress, but Republican governors collectively have been able to maintain some independence from him. You're starting to see that spread. Joining me now is the Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan. Governor Hogan, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning.
You've been sort of alone on this for years, saying the governors are pushing back, and you're starting to see more evidence of that. But I want to start overseas. Is there anything to be learned by the party from what the conservatives, the Tories, did with their unpopular and controversial leader?
Well, I think maybe not getting away from what the basic tenets of your party are, and changing direction. And I think he did some crazy things that didn't make the public very happy, and he lost his position.
Why isn't the America's conservative party doing the same thing with their leader?
Well, I would argue that we are. It's just taking longer than it should. As you pointed out, I've been talking about this for years now, and I felt like I was on a lifeboat, all by myself. But now we need a bigger boat because more and more people are speaking out every day. I was chair of the National Governors Association. We were pushing back all throughout COVID, but I've said that President Trump's influence on the party was going to diminish over time. It hasn't happened, rapidly, but it has diminished dramatically. And there are only about 34% of Republican primary voters who want to see the president run again.
You're in this awkward spot, and I know you work with a lot of these governor's races around the country. Governor Kemp was able to push back a Trump influence.
Yeah.
But you look at what's happening in Arizona, and there's a fight there. You look what's happening in Maryland.
Yep.
You have a fight there. You look at what's happening in Michigan, and there's no anti-Trump candidate because of some really bad campaign tactics, if you will. You win some, you lose some. Arizona and Michigan are pretty tough ones to lose, no?
Well, I agree, but it's an example of the fact that Trump's influence is diminishing. So I'm on the RGA Executive Committee. There were 5 different governors where Trump was attacking them. All of them won. I mean, I went down and did events for Brian Kemp. A couple of my staffers are down working in his campaign. Brian Kemp won by 52 points, and Brad Little won, and Kay Ivey won, and a number of other, all the incumbent governors that Trump went after have won their primaries. But yeah, national Democrats are now kind of colluding with Trump.
What's funny, you said, I'm going to play an ad now and ask you about it. Here it is.
Yeah.
This is one running in Maryland.
Dan Cox, Donald Trump's hand-picked candidate for Maryland governor. Cox worked with Trump, trying to prove the last election was a fraud. Dan Cox, too close to Trump, too conservative for Maryland.
Obviously, we know they're trying to say, hey, look at who's the more conservative guy. Now, they're not pretending they like the candidate here. Sometimes you see that in these subtle ads. But is this a Donald Trump problem or a Democratic Party aggressiveness?
Well, it's both. But I think this is a perfect example of, the Democratic Party is talking about, defending democracy, but they're spending tens of millions of dollars to promote, conspiracy theory believing, this guy that they're promoting with that ad took 2 busloads of people to the Capitol on January 6th and called Mike Pence a traitor while they were saying,
but
hang
when
Mike
Trump
Pence.
endorses him, is it do you blame the Democratic Party for pointing that out?
Well, Trump shouldn't be endorsing him, but the Democratic Party shouldn't be spending millions of dollars trying to promote conspiracy theorists.
No, I hear you, but if Trump wasn't doing it,
I agree with
you would have a better case.
Look,
right?
nobody's been standing up more to Donald Trump than me, and I'm going all around the country helping people that Trump is attacking, and we're winning most of them.
Based on what you've gleaned from the January 6th committee and what you've taken away, do you think he should be charged with a crime?
Well, I think that's for the Justice Department to decide, because I think one thing the American people do want is to take the politics out of it and get to the facts of what happened. I think the committee's done a service in bringing a lot of people forward that are finally talking, and we have a lot more information than we did. But that's something the Justice Department has to decide. Look, a lot of people are now talking.
Country. Do you think the country can handle prosecuting a former president?
Yeah, I'm not sure they can, but I think, no man is above the law. So if that's where the facts lead, that's what has to happen. But, a lot of people are talking about January 6th, but I was actually taking action on January 6th. I sent the Maryland State Police, riot police, and I sent the Maryland National Guard, and they were all the first to arrive to defend the leaders of Congress and the vice president.
I want to change subject slightly on the issue of guns. Your state, the Supreme Court ruling on the New York law meant Maryland's permit law, you were going to have to essentially allow it to happen. Do you feel as if the Supreme Court has constrained your ability to fight guns?
Well, look, I think it really doesn't do a whole lot. I mean, in Maryland, we've got some of the toughest gun laws in the country, but it hasn't stopped the shooting. So 99% of the gun crimes that take place are all illegal guns. It has nothing to do with people that are filing. But they're coming from states that don't have the Maryland laws, correct? Well, they're ghost guns, and they're people that are stealing and trafficking in stolen guns. But the violent crime problem is real. And it doesn't have much to do with, how you go about registration on concealed carry, because the shooters, the repeat violent offenders, they don't follow gun laws.
Yeah.
So.
No, I hear you. But look at all these mass shootings.
Yep.
Too many of them, they're always, oh, by the way, the gun was purchased legally.
Yeah.
So, and here you have states with red flag laws that can't be implemented. Is that really the elixir?
Well, look, I signed a red flag law that does work in Maryland, and so we aren't having some of those issues. I'm for universal background checks and for reasonable restrictions, but I've always supported the right of law-abiding citizens to go through a process and to be able to bear arms, but to do everything we possibly can to take guns away from the mentally ill and criminals. And that's the problem in our state. Our legislature keeps voting against penalties for people that shoot people with guns.
What do you think the Supreme Court has been too conservative, about right, or maybe too activist?
I'm not sure whether they've been activists or not, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I think the Supreme Court and the people that are on there made decisions based on what they thought their interpretation of the law was. And I know a lot of people conflate, how this came about, but, I think some of these issues that hadn't been heard before, they just found a legal reason for taking the action.
Are you worried it's become politicized, the court?
I'm worried about the fact that the country is so dramatically divided, and that some of these issues are going to continue to help us be divided. But I think the vast majority of people in America are just frustrated with all the angry rhetoric on both sides.
I know you're thinking about running for president. What would make you not run?
Well, look, I'm going to do the best job I can being governor until next January, but and I don't know exactly what the future holds. But I do think that there are an awful lot of people, I would call them the exhausted majority of Americans, who are frustrated with the far left and the far right. And they want to see us go in a different direction. So I've seen nothing that would dissuade me from thinking that I think there's a growing demand for exactly what we've done in Maryland over the last 8 years.
You think Donald Trump, if he runs, would ever concede losing over primary?
I'm hopeful that Donald Trump won't be running and won't be the nominee if he does run.
Governor Larry Hogan, Republican from Maryland. It's good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you. When we come back, the Trump White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, sat down with the January 6th committee last Friday. I'm going to talk to committee member Stephanie Murphy about what Cipollone told them and about what we can expect from this week's hearings.